Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Bryan's Business World. We're continuing with our investing in real estate series, and the topic we're going to talk about today is where do I buy? So, in some of our other shows, we've talked about people getting overwhelmed and what do they buy, what kind of property they buy. But equally puzzling to many people is where do I buy? Now, generally speaking, you've got sort of three areas of the total market that you can look at for buying a piece of real estate. So one area is what I'm going to call the exclusive or high-end market. This can be the hip neighborhoods that have arrived. They're not up-and-coming neighborhoods necessarily. They usually have arrived, and there is a high premium to them. It can be really desirable urban locations, or it can be very exclusive suburbs as well. So you have sort of the high-end, what's I'm going to call the high-end market, or the designated cool neighborhoods. But again, the cool neighborhoods with an emphasis that have arrived and already priced fairly high. You have the great sort of middle section of the real estate market. And a lot of this, not all of it, would be located in the suburbs of most cities, or maybe even a little farther out than the suburbs. The third area of the market you could look at is the lower end of the market. And this would be where, potentially, nothing wrong with it, trailer parks, some very lower end apartments, that type of thing. Those folks need housing too. And, nothing wrong with it. And there's some great investment opportunities there. But you've got sort of these three broad areas of the market. So which one should you focus on and why? Well, let's take a look at the exclusive or high-end market. Regarding the high-end market, there's a number of things that make those kind of real estate investment plays, despite their popularity, they're very popular with investors, not such a great idea. One is the acquisition cost. The land and the structures are very expensive in these premium neighborhoods, and everybody knows it, and you will pay a huge premium when acquiring them. That makes the amount of your down payment, or if you're buying cash, the amount of your payment, much higher. Also, if you are financing, the finance or carry cost then becomes much higher on the monthly. So your monthly mortgage or your monthly note on the property will be much higher, and that will eat into, quite honestly, the cost of acquisition will eat into the cash flows of your rents. So why do people then think the high-end plays are so great, and why are they chasing them so much? I really think it's a desire for prestige or feeling special. Most of the time, when you get down to brass tacks, the added acquisition and maintenance costs of a high-end property do not justify the return in terms of being able to charge the appropriate level of rent. So the amount of rent you can charge is actually a diminishing sort of curve. Rather not diminishing, but it flattens out. So the greater the expense of the property, the less you'll be able proportionally to charge for that property. So there's there's ultimately a limited return on having a very high-end property and how much rent you can actually charge for it. One other note of warning on high-end properties: you have to put a tremendous amount of capital into the finishes and renovations to compete with other high-end properties. So many people, it's very easy to see the high cost of capital and high acquisition cost. What is not seen by many real estate investors is the amount of ongoing capital reinvestment that you have to do to maintain very high-end finishes and almost constantly new renovations. And again, all of that eats into the bottom line. Now, let's also take a look at the low end of the market. The low end of the market, candidly, is very lucrative, very lucrative. There's no real debate on that. You can typically acquire the land and the structures at the lower end much more reasonably, and therefore, if the rents are even modest or reasonable, then you can pretty easily get a return that way. And honestly, lots of folks that are less fortunate, they need places to live. So the landlords who are in that space are providing a critical, essential service to those individuals. They can't, afford better. They can't often qualify for a home of their own. So they are providing something very important from a societal standpoint. So landlords that are in the lower end of the market, I think, sometimes get a bad rap. So why not go there if it's reasonable cost and you can make a lot of money? The answer is the amount of management time. To get fairly what I'm going to call high quality tenants in that space is possible but very challenging. You're going to have to very actively screen a lot of tenants, and the ultimate end quality of a particular tenant may be limited. People are seeking typically that type of housing because they've got some other problems in their past or in their lives. You might have criminal records, you might have bankruptcies, you might have substance abuse problems, all sorts of things like that going on. And you will be dealing with that if you are a landlord in that market space. Now, a lot of people say, well, I'm going to hire a manager to deal with that, and they'll handle the front line of that. That's not really entirely true. Some of that will creep through your manager and reach back to you. And so you will be dealing with some of those issues almost certainly, even if you have a decent manager. So where should you look? Well, the last one, which is the great middle. But there's an important catch here. What's the most, lucrative section of the middle? The most lucrative section of the middle is about at the 40th or 45th percentile. So you've got the 50th percentiles right at the average, a little bit below that, 5 to 10%. You get a good, nice neighborhood, a well-maintained property that targets that space. You will always have demand for renters in that space. And because you haven't spent a ton of money on acquiring the land or property, financing costs are low, and you don't have to do the renovation of the week as you do with the higher end properties or the most stellar finishes. Your chance of making a very good margin is excellent. So again, you have the highest, so why at the middle, or rather the 40th, 45th percentile? Low cost to acquire, low cost to finance, low or minimal costs of renovation and ongoing maintenance, and huge demand. And in that space, or rather at that sort of economic level, you can fairly easily get high quality tenants who are looking for a good space, good place to live, but don't want the high end. And you can get great tenants, great margin, and your carry costs and financing costs and acquisition costs will be very low. I hope you've gotten something out of our talk today, and we'll be continuing with our Investing in Real Estate series. Please leave some comments below, email us, follow us. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you.